Good morning and welcome back. It is now May 13th. Beautiful morning out here, nice, calm, and still. We do have a forecast for some thunderstorms today, but we'll see whether that develops or not. But there is definitely some clouds floating around. So down here by McGrath today, starting my week off down south. So let's see what we find down here. In this field, we are seeing a huge flush of wild oats. This has been a problem field. It's had resistant wild oats in here for years. It's a pretty thick stand between the rows in some of these places here. We did treat this field with Fortress, but it's just not getting all of them. Problem is, with product like Fortress, it's maybe 80% effective on average. You get 40,000 or more wild oats per acre, and it controls 80% of that. It's still an absolute pile of wild oats that can still come up. Well, you can see we've had a little bit of soil crusting here, but this wheat has just powered its way right through, and it's actually just lifting these blocks of of soil off the top. So that's pretty neat to see. If we get a little bit of a rain on that, that'll soften those lumps up, and it'll look a little bit better. Here in this field, we have a very nice emerging crop of spring wheat, coming up pretty good so far. Not 100% up at the moment, but good enough. You can see some nice clear seed rows. And apparently we also have a lamb out in the field. I don't know why. It's kind of a little random, but we'll figure it out. Out here checking my first of my biological trials. This was a variety of biologicals and humics that was applied at the time of seeding in this field. This is wheat. Not seeing any difference between the control plots and any of the other plots at the moment here. So we'll continue monitoring this, see what happens. I was hoping that with the rain washing it down into the seed row, we'd start to see some differences here at emergence, but really not looking like it at the moment. Well, now that we got some canola on the ground, got to be a little bit more careful with the seed row scraper as I'm going along. It's pretty easy to go too hard and accidentally miss some of this canola seed, especially if it's really shallow. It can be hard to find. So let's take a quick look here, see what we can see. As you can see, we've got a lot of volunteer cereals as well as wild oats in this field, so is going to be a good way to take care of it with some Roundup Ready canola. So there was canola seed right there, just about maybe a ½ inch in and just sitting inside that moisture layer. So looking good here so far. Canola should be germinating pretty quickly in conditions like this. Most of the fields I'm checking only have some pretty mild crusting issues, but this one is pretty severe. This one's got some really hard, thick crust. It's about 1 inch thick. You can see there is some wheat in there that is germinating, but it looks like it's traveling kind of sideways on a 45-degree angle, trying to find a spot to come out. So we'll have to see how this one does the next few days. We are expecting thunder showers, and if we get a little bit of a rain on this, it'll dramatically soften up this crust and allow the crop to come through, which might be needed in this case. I'm just glad this is not canola. Wheat can usually push its way through stuff, but I think even it's going to have trouble here. This fun little field down here, we're going to have some fun with. This is just kind of a little corner piece here, and it's about 10 acres in size. As you can see, we have a really good patch of volunteer cereals and wild oats in here. So this field, we're going to do something a little fun. We're going to come in here and hit this with some sorghum seed. Sorghum is a really interesting crop on dry land. It is extremely water efficient, and if it does get enough rain, it can top out at heights of 10 to 12 feet, similar to corn. So we're going to give that a try in here, but first we need to spray out all this volunteer cereals and wild oats and everything. So we're going to come in here with glyphosate and some AIM just to make sure that we're not using anything that has a residual that might damage the sorghum. Well, we just had a little thunderstorm pass through, so this field is a little bit wet now, but you can see we do have some canola popping up in here. This did get seeded before all of the rain last week, and it's coming up pretty good here now. Very light crust on here, and of course it's soft right now because it's just gotten rained on. So I'm thinking in the next couple of days we should see a whole lot more canola popping up in here. Right now you can see there's quite a few. Don't see any sign of flea beetle damage or anything on them yet, although I have been seeing some flea beetle damage on some volunteer canola, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. And I'm sure this week we'll see lots more canola starting to come out of the ground. Tuesday morning now, we did end up getting a ½ to 3/4 of an inch throughout most of the area last night, so our fields are once again pretty good and moist, which is great for the crops. You can see in this barley field here, we've got an excellent stand in emergence so far. So now at this point, I just got to walk around and make sure we don't have any wireworm or cutworm problems. And of course, I forgot to put my gumboots away last night, so off to a great start here this morning already. Well, all of the moisture is certainly giving us a good crop of weeds. You can see we got a whole pile of roundleaf mallow in here, so easily identifiable. Those first leaves are kind of arrowhead shaped, so very, very distinctive. Kind of looks like a buckwheat leaf, but the very next leaves that come out of them are the stereotypical mallow leaf, that kind of wrinkled fan look. So lots and lots of these guys coming up. Kochia, of course, keeps coming, as well as other weeds. There's a bunch of lamb's quarter stuff like that. It's all throughout a lot of these fields as well. But for the most part, right now, things are looking good. Excellent moisture, excellent potential. Very, very wet out in the fields today with the existing moisture that we had underneath. That ½ inch of rain has made things just downright soggy. So today I am very glad that I have tools like this to play with. Instead of slogging through full sections of emerging crop, I can just fly my drone from my truck. It's not perfect. It's difficult to see things like individual plants that have been cut off by cutworms, you know, stuff like that. But if there is patches developing in the field, it's pretty easy to spot them from 30, 40 feet up in the air, and you can cover quite a few acres. So that's what I'm doing today. Well, this interesting looking little guy is a 13-striped ground squirrel. I've never been able to actually just walk up and get this close to one before. You can see those distinctive stripes with the spots along his back. Really neat looking little guy. He must have been flooded out of his hole or something like that. These guys typically don't cause the problems that other gophers do. They don't make big mounds. They just have tiny little stealthy holes. Well, I'm here at the field entrance where I first found nymph grasshoppers last year, and I'm not finding anything right now. It seemed like last year one of the first things they went after was these dandelion flowers in this field entrance. Probably a really easy, high energy food source for them when they first emerge. Right now I'm not seeing anything, even though I have found eggs in the field here. But I'm thinking probably the moist, cold soil conditions are probably delaying their emergence compared to last year where we were dry and hot. So maybe in the next couple of weeks we will start to see some emergence. Unfortunately, the mosquitoes are starting to appear. I just swatted this guy on me. I have been bit a couple times already. With these moist conditions and all the puddles around, there's probably going to be quite a few of them this year. I might have to break out the mosquito netting for the first time in a few years. Well, in lots of these barley fields this week, I'm seeing a lot of pruned barley leaves. Most of the feeding is above the surface, and if you start scraping around enough, sure enough, you'll find probably one of these guys, a dingy cutworm. There's quite a few of them showing up right now. This is kind of, I'd say a medium-sized guy, and this would be kind of prime feeding stage. They're going to be voracious. They're going to be feeding lots to get up, get larger, get into that pupal stage. Now, in drought conditions, this might be pretty severe, this feeding, because the plants would really struggle to recover from, but you can already see these plants are regrowing. They're putting out new leaves, and I'm not too terribly concerned about it. Also, some of the cutworms I am finding, not this one, but some of the other ones I have found have been very lethargic. I think the cruiser that the seed is treated with is affecting them a little bit. It'll probably make them lethargic, knock them out for a couple days, but they will come back and they will feed. But with these good moisture conditions and good fertility, good sunlight, we're going to see this crop is going to rapidly outgrow these guys. I'm not seeing any patches. I'm just seeing isolated spots like this where there's 4 to 5 inches in a seed row where we see a little bit of leaf pruning. The threshold for a lot of cutworms is usually somewhere 1 to 5 per square meter. I'm not really finding that, but if you are seeing patches developing in your fields, then it's probably worthwhile to go and get after them. I think the trouble is trying to establish a threshold in these where you're trying to count so many cutworms in a seed row. Cutworms can be extremely hard to find. With the moisture conditions right now, cutworms are being fairly difficult to dig for. They're doing a really good job at hiding and getting out of the sunlight, and it's quite mucky, so it's difficult to find them compared to when the soil is dry. So if you are seeing damage like in big patches, it might be worthwhile considering control. Now that we have some pretty good pea emergence on a lot of these earlier seeded areas, now is the time to start scouting here and looking for pea leaf weevil. You can see these guys here are all looking pretty good, but this one we do have one notch taken out right here. I'll zoom in on that guy. So you can see that is one bite taken out by a pea leaf weevil. So it's a good idea to keep an eye on this. There used to be all sorts of crazy thresholds where you'd be looking for 3 sets of notches on the first node for every 3 plants. might be worth spraying kind of thing. All of that has kind of gone by the wayside now. For the most part, everybody is doing seed treating for pea leaf weevil now, and this field is no exception. Now, this is along the edge of the field, so it is not uncommon to see a bite or two. See, here's another one right there. However, as those weevils move in from the edge of the field, they pick up that seed treatment and they pretty quickly get controlled. So out in the center of the field, you're very unlikely to see any sort of damage at all. If you have not treated for pea leaf weevil, you are in a little bit more danger, but even then still, by the time you're seeing threshold levels of above ground feeding, in reality, the eggs of the weevils have already been laid, and those larvae that emerge from those eggs are the ones that really actually do the damage underground. There's nothing you're going to be able to do about them. The only real control measure is seed treatment. Anything else, spraying a broad spectrum insecticide across the soil surface, is basically just considered revenge spraying at this point. Here we have some very nice looking winter wheat. We're at pretty much row closure on here. There's the odd weed here and there, but overall it's not too bad. One weed in here that I did find I don't often get to see, this is groundsel. So really interesting little weed. It has yellow flowers on it that look not dissimilar from other plants in the Asteraceae family or a sow thistle. It's just kind of a smaller version. So pretty fun little weed, don't see it too often. Well, in the winter wheat, as the canopy closes, we got to start watching out for things like downy mildew, powdery mildew, stuff like that. Some diseases in the lower canopy. Even though this hasn't been irrigated yet, it's still a pretty nice humid canopy, and we are starting to see the beginning signs of disease in here. So we definitely got to keep an eye out on this. If we're coming in, hitting this with in crop or anything like that, might as well throw a fungicide in if you're seeing it like that already. Well, it is a windy and soggy Friday morning. I think we got about 1/4 of an inch of rain overnight, and probably another 1/4 of an inch since then. So things are getting pretty wet. Certainly no field activity is going to be going on today, and probably not tomorrow either, which might mean we actually get a May long weekend, although I certainly wouldn't want to be out camping in this right now. But yeah, we'll see you next week, and hopefully we'll get a stretch of dry weather. We can get some more seeding done.